Ani, there you are. I've been looking everywhere for you.
You were late, Lyrillin. Rowan and I went looking for some books.
Oh, I see. Did you find anything at least?
We found a story about the serpent for the serpent's hand. And then we found Van Latte. When were you planning on telling me our chemistry professor is in the library?
About today.
Okay. Fine. Hey, Kat.
Hi, Ani.
So, where were you guys?
So, Catalina, Mars, Jean, and I went exploring while we were looking for you. We found depression, Catalina flavored.
Hey!
That fits.
Hold on. Kat, where did Jean and Mars go?
Oh, god damn it, Jean!
Yeah, I think I overheard Jean inviting Mars to go get some snacks.
Oh, fuck.
Don't worry, Rowan went after them. Hopefully they'll be back before Jean manages to burn the place down.
Alright, fine. Well, I do have some business that I want to cover now that some of us are here. Okay, look. We've been exploring this library for quite a while, and I've begun to run into a problem that plagues all clubs at our university. Organizing. To be quite frank, I don't really know what's going on, and Catalina can attest that I was too depressed to figure this out for a while. Not to mention that we've had a lot of explorations without my lead, which is fine, of course, but it leaves me lost. So I think we need to take a moment and recollect ourselves, and I really need to take a chance to understand what we've been up to. So, alright. If you're all okay with this, Catalina, can you summarize the last few adventures for me?
Sure. So a few weeks ago, Jean brought Mars and I into hell. Hell. He brought us to hell. We explored the lost stacks of the library and found moving mazes, shadow diseases, wild magic, and a murder doctor. Sorry, I'm still not over that. Then a week later, Rowan brought Ani, Mars, and I through a guided museum tour, quote unquote, of the many groups that have tried to destroy this place before. She showed us the Jailors, book burners, those who've never even existed, and the biggest throne I have ever seen. Last week, after your depression nap, we met Van Late. He told us about one of his students who was magical, I think? Still not clear on that. But apparently it featured the Serpent's Hand and how their connection with the library came to be. And now we're here. Do you need me to summarize that too?
You know what? Yeah, please do. At least for Ani.
Gotcha. Just now, we found my story, I guess? We found a story of someone from the library, I think, with a history very close to my own. They handled it not so great, but at least it reinforces that I can't be whatever he was.
Okay. Yeah, that summarizes that pretty well. Ani, anything you want to add?
Well, Catalina has said almost all of it. We spent the first few weeks looking for stories together and panicking for exams. Then I nearly died and said fuck it, and have made it my mission to figure out what the hell happened. So Rowan brought us on that tour, and just today Rowan and I went exploring. Apparently the Serpent's Hand has a very literal serpent below infinity at the infinite foundations of the library. Don't ask.
Got it.
And then Van Latte showed up, apparently, and decided to show us random scraps of paper he's collected, and then he was gone again.
Of course. Okay, I think I follow. On my part, after Jean tried to kill Catalina and Mars, I had a long talk with Rowan about how I feel about the danger that everyone has faced in the library. I will admit, it was a lot. But when I came back last week, Catalina and Rowan were more than happy to welcome me. It was touching.
So, what now?
Well, see, the reason I asked us to do this is because I was getting the feeling like things were connected, but I'm really starting to think that they are. So, give me a second. Let me piece this together. So, You encounter wild magic with Jean and discover that people can control it. Rowan tells me about the creation of the universe, apparently. You go on a tour featuring all the organizations that try to manipulate the library or those within it, attacking wanderers and hand members. We run into Von Late, who tells us about one of his students who joined the Hand and can do magic, apparently. And then Rowan and Ani learned about the very real serpent from the Serpent's Hand before Von Late hints at...
magic, yeah.
Right. And then we had Catalina's story, which explored another dimension. So, we have spent the past few weeks learning about magic, dimensions, and the Serpent's Hand nonstop, with only a break for me to wallow a little bit.
So you're saying...
Look, we've been exploring for weeks, and I'm going to be quite honest, we still don't know who the Serpent's Hand really are. We keep meeting their members, we keep reading about them, we keep seeing what they can do, and we keep figuring out about those who fight for them or against them. And yet, I'm gonna be real, I feel like I understand them even less.
Well, duh. I mean, they aren't exactly an organization. According to Rowan, they're an idea, and to be a member, you just have to say that you're a member. Like, that's it. I'm not sure there's really much to understand.
Au contraire, my dear students.
Oh no.
While yes, the Hand isn't an organization, but a basic idea, that doesn't mean they don't have patterns, beliefs, or ideals.
Von Late, please don't tell me you're here to...
To answer your question, why of course! The Hand is known for more than just believing you're part of the Hand. They're dedicated to the preservation of knowledge and to preventing the containment of things not deemed normal.
What?
You have heard of the Jailors, yes? Those that seek to contain and control everything they don't understand? Or perhaps the GOC, those that seek to destroy all that is anomalous? Well, the Hand acts in contrast to them. They seek not to contain or destroy, but to embrace, to learn, and to protect.
I feel like I know even less now.
Well, a story is best to be told, not explained. Leerlin, maybe you could do the honors?
You want me to read this?
You're in a predicament, are you not? This should at least help you solve it. In your own words, you've spent weeks learning about the Hand. Why don't we tie that up in a little bow with a story of my choosing?
Well, if you insist. Biological Research Area 23 was located in an undisclosed location in central Russia. When he was a younger man working for the Soviets, Radomir Valkov had resented spending so much of his life moving from one remote facility to another. But as an old man working for the Foundation, he actually found himself looking forward to a chance to relax. He wasn't important enough to get his own charter flight, and his employers couldn't expect him to do Foundation business while traveling by train. As he strolled out of the train station, he appreciated the opportunity to stretch his legs as he walked to a side street nearby. The air was cold, but his heavy gray overcoat took the edge off of it. He didn't have to wait long before an unmarked white van arrived, parking a short distance down the road from them. Valkov walked towards it, as a man stepped out of the passenger seat. His white shirt, black trousers, and bulletproof vest gave the impression of a uniform, despite the lack of many identifiable markings.
How was your journey?
My journey was long but uneventful.
He was quickly ushered inside the back of the van. There were seats and lights, but no windows. Operational security was serious business, and his employers didn't fully trust anyone. Valkov took a seat, and was mildly surprised to find a young woman sitting in the van next to him.
I did not realize I would be having company.
That was a last-minute decision.
She also spoke Russian, but badly, placing emphasis on all the wrong syllables. Valkov got the impression that she was self-conscious about this. The van began to move, and the lack of windows made the experience disorienting.
I can speak English if you'd prefer. Are you American?
She nodded, clearly understanding the words he was saying, but turned back to her phone.
What is your name?
Sophie Blake.
I am Radomir Volkov. What brings you all the way out here?
Top secret.
Naturally. I understand. Conversations about work are frequently off limits. Well, when you're not working, what do you like to do?
Spend time alone.
Interesting. I enjoy reading when I have time to myself. How familiar are you with Russian literature? I've read works by English writers too. Do you have any recommendations for me?
No.
Then she returned to her screen. Since his companion seemed like she wasn't up for much conversation, Valkov decided to rest. He'd been in the windowless van for the next few hours. He might as well catch up on some sleep. Valkov woke as the vehicle came to a halt and calmly waited until it parked. His female companion seemed far less patient, but was still not in the mood for small talk. Once the doors opened, she got out first, looking around nervously until a man in spectacles approached. Valkov climbed out behind her. While he didn't try to eavesdrop, the conversation he overheard suggested that Miss Blake was a technical consultant, called out to this remote facility to do something with computers. The two of them began walking towards a low-rise building made from weathered Soviet concrete. Each time he visited Area 23, Valkov couldn't help but feel a strange kinship with the ugly relic of a previous area. This time, Valkov did not enter the main building, but was instead led towards the entrance to an underground bunker dug into the side of a mountain. He was escorted by a smartly dressed blonde woman, a colleague he'd worked with before. Valkov greeted Sorokina warmly and accepted her offer to get him a coffee on the way, but waited until they were in the briefing room before starting with his first question.
So, Agent Soronika, what do we actually know about this prisoner?
A lot, but we suspect it's all lies.
I imagine that is why you called for me.
She passed the file across the table to him, and he opened it as Sorokina offered a quick summary.
Security picked him up inside a disused wing of Site-35, trying to access SIPNet. He was armed, but didn't try to resist us. Based on his tattoos and the drugs he was carrying, we suspected he was a member of the Neo-Sarkic crime syndicate known as the Hunter's Black Lodge. That's why we brought him here.
The first page was the incident report, but those were pretty dull when the target just surrendered. The second page was a dense technical report that went entirely over Valkov's head, but from the summary, seemed like a man had been trying to access information about the location of Foundation facilities in Russia. The third page was what he was actually looking for. The photographs of the prisoner had been taken at Area 23 after he was strip searched, so several large black snake tattoos were visible on various parts of his body. There were also images of the belongings that had been taken from him. The clothing he'd been wearing was fairly standard. Even the body armor wasn't too surprising, given that he'd broken into a Foundation facility. The next photograph showed the items he had been carrying: a pistol, 3 knives, and various tools for picking locks, as well as a needle, syringe, and 2 bottles of red fluid.
Anything anomalous on this person?
Those drugs are an anabolic steroid known as Rath. It's a parapharmaceutical produced and distributed by the Hunter's Black Lodge, so he must have some connection with them. There's also the living tattoo. He had other tattoos when we detained him, with lots of Sarkic symbolism, but those are all gone now. We think the snake ate them?
A living tattoo that ate other tattoos was rather unremarkable by Valkov's estimation. He expected more as he looked through the file, but Hume, EVE, and Akiva readings were all within normal ranges, and a series of genetic tests, x-rays, and even a CT scan had noted no other abnormalities. If this man was affiliated with the Hunter's Black Lodge, he didn't seem to have any of their anomalous perks. Given that he'd been found breaking into a Foundation site, the organization likely regarded him as disposable. Although, with Sarkic cultists, it was impossible to be certain that nothing strange would be revealed once you got into the same room as them. That was apparently a risk his employers were willing to take, although there was still a long list of precautions that had been instructed to follow, including wearing gloves to avoid skin-to-skin contact. The rest of the file was a series of transcripts. A lot of transcripts.
You know how, most of the time, the people we detain are reluctant to talk?
He has been very talkative.
Not this one. As far as we can tell, it's all lies. Obviously, we started by questioning him about the Hunter's Black Lodge, and after some initial reluctance, he was very informative, but none of it checked out. Once we confronted him with that, he claimed to be working undercover for the GOC, which we thought might be true until we realized nothing about his story made any sense. Since then, he's claimed to be affiliated with every anomalous organization I've ever heard of, and a few more that I can only assume exist because all of the search results for them were classified.
Very detailed lies, though.
He's either rehearsed a lot of stories, or he's very good at improv. He keeps contradicting himself, though.
His aim isn't to be believed when he lies. It is to be disbelieved when he does let the truth slip out. I need to look something up.
So soon? You've barely read the briefing.
I am not wasting my time with his lies. He's been stalling for time, waiting for something. I know his type. If I am to learn anything about him, I need to look elsewhere.
He went off in search of a computer with SCIP net access, rummaging in his pocket for his login details. IT kept telling him to memorize them, but he didn't have the time to do another password reset. A short time later, Velkov begrudgingly put on gloves, resenting the implication that he would resort to such crude methods as laying his hands on a prisoner. Velkov was an interrogator, but contrary to the expectations of many of his colleagues, that did not mean he just hit people until he started talking. As this current prisoner was demonstrating, getting people to talk was quite easy. Assessing whether they were telling the truth was much harder. It required years of experience and the ability to do your own research. Velkov opened the door to interrogation room 7 and watched the prisoner stop mid-sentence and look towards him with obvious interest. He was seated opposite the door, with his hands cuffed to the table in front of him. Velkov had assumed the previous photos he'd seen had been overexposed, but seeing the man in person confirmed that he really was as pale as the images had indicated. His skin was almost as white as his hair. He was wearing nothing except for a pair of boxer shorts, exposing a lean body covered with pale scars and a number of more recent injuries. The flat head of a black serpent tattoo peered over his right shoulder, its tail winding across his back and then across his stomach. As Velkov watched it, a black tongue flicked out of its mouth for a moment, and it shifted slightly. On the other side of the table, quickly standing up to face the door, were two young men. The previous interrogators had apparently thought that the snake tattoo might be some sort of tell and had wanted to keep an eye on it, although they may have just hoped a cold and exposed prisoner might be more cooperative. They tried various combinations of bribes and threats, and had clearly tried beating him, but hadn't made any progress despite the volume of transcripts they produced. Velkov just dismissed them as amateurs. As they got up from their seats, he gestured at them to stay behind him, assuming they weren't amnesticized at the end of this. They might actually learn something from watching him.
So, you were telling our story when I interrupted.
I was just talking about the time I went hunting for a Tarrasque in France. It was a frightful creature, all horns and teeth, but with my trusty...
Liar.
You offend me. Every word I've said has been the absolute truth. Now, if you let me continue...
I won't. Unlike the men you have previously been talking to, I actually have the clearance to do background check. Once I ignored every word that's come out of your mouth, the tattoo and general appearance were a giveaway. Would you like me to refer to you as Gianni Ferraro, liberator of anomalous art and murderer of its curators? Or perhaps Juan Herrero, the South American guerrilla fighter affiliated with Las Viboras? Or maybe even Yahya Haddad, the name they know you by in New Babylon?
My friends call me White Crow.
Of course they do. Your friends have a preference for the melodramatic. They call themselves the Serpent's Hand, after all. Here, you are simply a detained person of interest. A numerical designation pending.
It seems I can't fool you. You know all 3 of my aliases. Very impressive. You've been doing this a long time, haven't you? Since you've effortlessly seen through me, I suppose it's time to reveal the truth. You see, you and me, we're not so different, despite the circumstances. A man like you must have experience. Ex-military? No, not quite. Intelligence. Perhaps GRU. I suppose you would have been in the psychotronics division if you ended up here.
Velkov didn't think he'd reacted, but the man opposite him smiled as the tattoo coiled around his arm. He'd worked it out. Of course, that was not a particularly unusual career path for an older Russian now working for the SCP Foundation, so it could just be a lucky guess.
I don't think we ever met. You would have been after my time. But it's an amusing coincidence that we'd both end up here.
The man's exact age was hard to place. He definitely looked younger than Velkov, despite his white hair. Not that that necessarily meant anything in their line of work. After a long pause, Velkov realized the prisoner was waiting for a reaction from him. Closely scrutinizing the pale face in front of him, Velkov asked a question.
What was your name?
Ivan Kuznetsov. Not sure if you'll find me in the records, but I was in the KGB back in the 1950s.
If that is true, you've aged a lot better than I have.
Oh, I haven't aged at all. Not until recently. See, I got my hands on some subversive literature, as we said in those days. The person who had the books when we arrested them just told us he'd gotten them from a library. He seemed reluctant to say too much, and back then we could be very persuasive. Eventually he gave us directions, but they led us to an empty building. Still, there were some very concerning allegations in those pages about very important people. It was not the kind of material I wanted to be associated with, not at that stage of my career. I took the executive decision to have the books destroyed. It turns out incinerating library books makes librarians very upset. I soon found out where those books had originally come from, and it was a painful discovery. I owed the Wanderers Library a debt, and I worked there until it was paid in full.
How long did that take?
A lifetime. But a rather boring one, mostly spent restocking shelves.
And now?
Well, it's not like I could go back to the USSR. It no longer exists, and I'm not too fond of what's replaced it.
So, you've joined the Serpent's Hand. A very strange choice, given how you got into the library in the first place.
Did you ever believe?
That is not how this works. Tell me about you.
You might have been too late for that. You work here. Maybe you always just accepted the status quo. But, thanks to the library, I'm old enough to remember the revolution. To remember the Great Patriotic War. I knew men who fought and died because they believed a better world was possible.
You are so political.
The distinction between normal and paranormal is entirely artificial. I stand in solidarity with oppressed people everywhere. The Serpent's Hand...
Enough. I am sure it will amuse you to stop inventing stories about organizations you've only read about, and instead tell lies about the group you are actually part of. But it has been a long day, and I do not have time for that. You may think you can convince us to let you out of here with the right words, but you are not going anywhere. The best you can hope for is a more comfortable cell, and I suggest you start thinking carefully about what you say, because a lifetime in solitary confinement will be difficult to endure.
I expect nothing less from the jailers.
I don't expect you to give us any useful information, not as long as you have that hope.
You really think they have some sort of jailbreak planned? For me? So is this the part where you start torturing me?
No, I am leaving. I think I'll have something to eat, and then find a room to sleep in. Return him to his cell, and keep him in solitary confinement until I return. It should be a week, but it may be longer. What he needs is time alone to realize that nobody is coming to get him. So, should we return him to his cell then?
There's some sort of breach at the perimeter. I'm here to escort him back to his cell.
They sent you alone.
They can escort me. We need to get this done now. We're still not sure what's going on outside.
Then I will accompany you too. I am curious to see how the prisoner reacts to this.
This has nothing to do with me.
Vilchez brought up the rear as the new guard escorted the prisoner towards the low-security humanoid containment level, restraining him with a firm grip on his upper arm with a gloved hand. Vilchez kept a close eye on the prisoner, the black tattoo now twisting across his shoulders. It was possible the alarm had nothing to do with him, but the Serpent's hand would probably not abandon someone this well connected, and wouldn't want to leave him in containment for too long.
Can you get the door?
The two guards scanned open the security gate, and the guard escorted the prisoner through, each interrogator holding one of the doors open, entering a hallway lined with cells.
Aren't those cells reserved for low-risk prisoners? So where exactly are you taking him?
Which cell did you collect him from?
The other interrogator rummaged in his pocket. Like Vilchez, it seemed they struggled to keep track of all the numbers they were given.
I lied. The Serpent's hand planned all of this.
White Crow's body was still facing away from them, restrained by the firm grip on his upper arm, but he now turned his neck to look back at them.
You will die in the dark so that we can live in the light.
Those words drew their attention back to White Crow. He'd spun around to face them, the closest guard's grip on his upper arm falling away. To their surprise, his hands were now free from the cuffs, enabling him to make a gesture so obscene it triggered the gag reflex of everyone walking.
Well done, Loxley. You remembered to look away.
We practiced. Oh, God!
There was another retching sound, this time coming from the only guard still standing. The man White Crow was referring to as Loxley. Vilchez, still conscious as he lay on the ground, wondered if the shock from the hole in his chest was making him hallucinate. The man was still dressed as a Foundation guard, but suddenly seemed to have a green reptilian face. Vilchez, now sprawled on his back, couldn't stop himself from coughing up a small amount of blood onto the concrete floor. Loxley glanced over with inhuman yellow eyes, then immediately looked away.
You're squeamish for a bloodsucker. Your face slipped again.
It's the open wounds. It's almost as bad as that gesture.
There's no language more expressive than library sign. Is she here?
Yes, right past that door.
Good. You have my jacket?
Loxley handed a small piece of fabric to White Crow. There was a rustling of fabric as the pale man, with a magician's flourish, pulled an entire black jacket out of the small square he'd been given. He then put the garment over his bare chest.
I'm not sure if the old man's did.
He's close enough, Crow. Focus on opening that door. They'll have seen us on the cameras. The keycards you have will no longer work.
This is going to be loud.
I hope you have some of that left. We still need to open that cell door.
I'd rather not blow her up. I'll drill the lock instead. We should block this way off first to stop anyone from coming after us.
Vilchez felt that he had too many unanswered questions to die now, but it was getting increasingly difficult to remain conscious. He'd just have to hope he'd stubbornly hold out until a medical team arrived. Everything went dark. And that's it. So that's the Serpent's hand. They're shockingly violent. They seem radical. They want to tear down walls. And these jailors, the Foundation, I guess, they try to keep everything in? Von Late, what are... And he's gone.
Typical.
Who even are these jailers? For things to go so violent, they have to be bad.
I don't know, but maybe that's what we should try to find out next.
Let me guess. New mission time?
New mission time. The next semester starts in 2 weeks. Before then, I want to know who these jailers are and why they keep hunting the hand. And that's it for today's episode. So, as we close, as normal, I would like to take this opportunity to thank the people behind the scenes that made this episode possible. In particular, I want to thank the many voice actors for this episode, including Kit, who played Ani and Sophie, Esme, who played Catalina and White Crow, Emily, who played Von Late, John, who played Vilchez and the Guard, as well as Echo, who played Sorokina. I, Gaia, played the roles of Lyrlin and Loxy, for those curious. As well, I would like to thank the producer of the music that you heard in the background. His name is Kevin MacLeod, and you can listen to his music and more at incomptech.com. And finally, I would like to thank the author of the story that you heard today. The story was The Serpent Deceived by Jordan from the SCP Wiki. So, thank you so much for listening, and have a good one.